Hello, listeners. This is Vanessa Kotler, and you are listening to the CHRO Mindset Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the CHRO Mindset Podcast, where we bring you candid, thought-provoking conversations with top HR leaders and experts. And here's your host, Pulkit Joshi. Today, we have the privilege of hosting Vanessa Kotler. Vanessa Kotler is an ambitious HR leader who has worked in over 20 countries, bringing a global perspective into everything she does. She is passionate about building flexible workplaces and advocates for transparency and ongoing feedback to increase attraction and retention of top talent, evident in her work as VP People and Culture at PolicyMe. Previously, Vanessa co-founded an HR tech startup focused on removing bias in application and hiring processes, led people operations at IQ Metrics, and worked as a management consultant at Monitor Deloitte Canada, where she provided strategic guidance to Fortune 500 companies. In her spare time, Vanessa contributes to people and culture thought leadership and offers guidance to startups that need help structuring their HR practices. In 2023, Vanessa was named a top 25 emerging culture creators by Culture Amp and was a finalist for HRO Today's HR Excellence category. In 2024, she was named one of the top 10 CHROs by Diversity Can magazine, and Vanessa holds an MBA from the Queen's University. Vanessa, thanks for taking out time to speak with us today, and welcome to the CHRO Mindset Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So let's get going with an icebreaker question, Vanessa. If you could implement one HR initiative or policy in every organization, what would it be and why?
Yeah, great starting question. I think for me, where I would go, I don't know if it's necessarily a policy, but ongoing feedback practices. I think that what I've noticed is that organizations that have recurring feedback, be it in weekly one-on-ones, some sort of pulse check-in, whatever it might be, they are the ones that are thriving. When organizations are leaving feedback for performance reviews once or twice a year, that's not really the way to do it. I know this is something we talk about a lot in the business, but I think that real-time feedback is so key and so valuable. So anything that an organization can do to implement the right process or the right policy in place that supports that regular feedback, especially between managers and their direct reports, I think is a huge win.
Awesome. I love that response. Let's keep going. Let's now talk about your HR journey, right? So every HR leader out there has gone through their own career trajectory, right? Starting from an intern to becoming an HR leader, right? And there's so many stories that remain untold, right? There's so many experiences that one goes through across that journey, right? So I have a question for you here. In your experience, what are the common pitfalls or misconceptions HR professionals often encounter? That's the first part of the question. And second is, what strategies have you found effective in overcoming or avoiding them?
Yeah, great question. Maybe let's tackle the first, and you can keep me honest and follow up with me after so we get the second.
Sure.
So when we think about common pitfalls, I think one of the biggest ones that I see is just not looking at HR in the context of the business and looking at HR separately from the business. I think that when you go through a career in HR, or for many of us like myself, I transitioned into HR. Uh, you get to see the value that bringing those forces together has. I think any HR team or HR leader that is trying to operate separately from the CEO, from the executive team, will just never have the same level of success as one that is ingrained into the operating principles of the business. So I think the biggest thing is, in an ideal world, HR truly is a partner to the business and operating together. And I think touching on strategies to help avoid that pitfall, I think it's so much about asking the key questions. It's about meeting with the CEO regularly, meeting with the executives regularly, understanding what are their challenges, what are the things that are going on for them, how can you as the HR leader or you as the HR team best support them. And I think it's continuing to ingrain into the day to day. One of the things that I see is when HR only comes in to solve problems, to solve issues, that's really not the best way to position HR to add the most value to the business. When HR is ingrained in the day-to-day operations and is a partner for thinking about the future structure of the business, thinking about how to enable managers to lead better, when HR is a thought partner in the day-to-day, that's when I've seen that organizations truly get the most out of their HR leaders and teams.
Totally agree with you on that, Vanessa. I feel that it's extremely crucial for that integration to happen between how the organization is looking at the entire ecosystem from a strategy standpoint and how is HR as a function interlocked into that larger picture. Uh, Totally with you on that. Let's keep going. Let's now talk about one theme, which, truth be told, we haven't yet covered in any of the episodes on this podcast, and I'm going to be talking about employee onboarding and integration. Right? It's an extremely crucial phase of the overall employee journey. I feel because, like they say, first impression is the last impression, right? And I think that's the first moment of truth that the employee or the candidate, whosoever, right, in whatever stage, goes through while they get into an organization, right? So I have a list of questions that we will want to cover, talking about employee onboarding and integrations. First question for you is, as an HR leader, what trends are you noticing in employee onboarding strategies across industries?
Yeah, great question. And I'll answer in a second. I think to your point, I think just it's not talked about enough, in my opinion, but onboarding really is that first step that an employee has with a company. And if it's not done well, that's where I think you really can get off on the wrong foot. And
Yeah.
you can hire the best person, you can find the best talent. But if you don't, as an organization, onboard them effectively into the company or your team, they actually may just not be able to do a good job. And it may not be because you hired the wrong person. It may just be you haven't figured out how to give them what they need to do the job. So, in terms of trends that I've noticed, I think a really big one right now is hyper personalization. And what that means is it's not just a generic onboarding process for everyone. It's really thinking about what each human needs and prefers and how to enable them to onboard in a way that makes most sense for them. For example, some people like to wait until their first day or first week on the job to meet their manager, start getting information. And some people actually prefer to do it before they start. And there's no right or wrong, it's just preference, right? So, what
Yeah.
I've seen is a greater propensity to ask questions ahead of someone starting and to just give more choice and options in terms of how someone wants their onboarding experience to look.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you for that. Uh, let's now talk about another aspect, and this is about how should HR leaders ensure that the onboarding programs are effectively integrated into, remote workplaces or remote employees, because times have changed. There's so much happening, right? Not everybody would be working from office, so it's very crucial that this segment is also well taken care of. So your thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we're a remote first company at Policy Me, so all of our onboarding is remote. I think
Awesome.
that the piece here is frequent communication and consistent checkpoints. So to explain how we do it, like I said, we ask for preference and we ask for input in advance of someone starting. And then we do two things. So I have someone on my team that focuses on the employee and I focus on the manager. And we do with the employee 1 week, a 30-day, a 60-day, a 90-day, a 6 month, and a 1 year check-in that someone on my team runs. And then in parallel, I do a 30, 60, and 90-day check-in with the manager. So this is to ensure that the relationship is going well and that we're able to catch any issues early. I think that if there's problems, your first 30 to 60, 90 days are the best moment to solve them and to figure out, is it an issue with us, how we're onboarding this person, what they're learning, what they're not learning, or could we potentially have hired someone into the wrong role, right? So I think those early moments are so important to make sure that not only have you hired the right person, but are you giving them the right tools and spaces to be able to show what they can do. And beyond just the check-ins, we also do surveys. So it's really a way for us to get information from employees in terms of, did they get what they need, right? And are they getting what they need, not only from us as the HR team, but from their managers and from their peers? And does this feel like a place that is what we told them it was going to be like? So the surveys are really short, but we do them with that same cadency as the check-in. So we're able to collect information over time. And
Mhm.
what we do is we then take that feedback and essentially incorporate it into every time we hire someone else. so that each time we're getting better as a business. And it's not a novel thing to say, ask for the feedback, but I think the more that you do that, the more that you're able to really build that in a way that makes sense. I do think though, one thing that sometimes I share is it's super important to figure out what really needs to be a human component in the experience and what can be automated and where is technology helpful. I think that there's so many tools out there in terms of AI enabled tools, just different tech tools that help with onboarding. But it's super important to remember that starting a new job can be really overwhelming. And having that human connection and that human moment and being there to support someone through that in whatever way they need can have a really big impact. So I think it's just super crucial, especially in that remote setting, to think about what are the things that we're going to enable with technology and what are the human moments that we need to make sure we're present for.
Great perspective there. Thank you for sharing that, Vanessa. Now, we've spoken about, what do you do to make sure that the remote employees and the onboarding for all employees is well taken care of, right? Uh, but to be able to measure, how effective all those initiatives have been, I think it's extremely crucial. And as they say, what gets measured, gets improved. So, how do you measure the effectiveness of your organization's onboarding efforts?
Yeah, good question. I think a lot of it ties back to what I was just saying with our
Yeah.
surveys, right? So we ask those key questions and we ask them of every new hire, and then we ask managers too around their experience. And that's
Hmm.
how we're able to measure how well it is going or where we need to change essentially to make it better. I do think the other piece that comes into measurement is essentially the first performance review cycle of a new hire, just to understand the key question around, would I hire this person again if I could go back in time and hire anyone into the role. I think those are really great ways to understand, did we really hire the right human? But I do think at the same time that hire question is not necessarily tied to onboarding, because
Yeah.
so much of onboarding I think is our responsibility, right? So I think it's
Yeah.
that mix. So I think that the surveys really are the best way for us to understand it, and really those conversations with the new hires and with their managers and getting that feedback as to where we can improve.
Okay. Okay. Any particular metrics that you look at while you do the analysis?
Yeah, so basically what we're looking to figure out is how quickly are people onboarding, right?
Okay.
So basically what we're trying to figure out is, there's a question around like, do you feel like you have all the things that you need to do your job well? And, week one, usually not super high level of readiness with people feeling like they have everything, but definitely by like month two, we want to see that people have what they need to be doing their jobs well, right? So I think when you think about measurement of onboarding effectiveness, a question like that you're asking over a set of moments can really
Yeah.
help you figure out, okay, are people actually getting what they need to do their job
Understood.
well? Which really is the point of onboarding, right?
Understood. Understood. Makes sense. Thank you. Let's now look at another aspect, and we're talking about, there are different kind of employees with diverse backgrounds, right? So, from your experience, how must HR leaders address the challenge of onboarding employees from diverse backgrounds?
Yeah, I think this again comes back to that personalization component, right? Ask the questions, get to know the humans that you're hiring, ask what's important to them, and figure out, are there any changes that we need to make and how we're onboarding this individual onto the team. Sometimes there's, a religious holiday that's coming up, and it's figuring out, okay, how does that fit into their onboarding plan as well, to make sure that that can be respected and considered, or really anything else that's going on for a person in terms of essentially things that could be happening in their life too, right? So I think so much of it is asking those key questions in terms of, what is it that you need? How can we make this experience the best as possible for you? And I think bringing it back to that human moment and experience. And also, once they start, especially if it's someone from a background you've never hired before, just checking in as well, right? Seeing how they're doing, seeing how their experience is. But I think we should be asking those questions of anyone that onboards as well, because I do think you don't want to single someone out and be like, you are someone that is more diverse, because I don't really
Yeah.
think that's the right way to do it. And I
Yeah.
also think nowadays it would be like a weird thing to look to
Yeah.
separate. I think it's about figuring out, how do we personalize and how do we ask the right questions and give someone the space to tell us what they need, and then actually offer that support, right? I think the worst thing we can do is ask, how can I make this best for you? Or how do you want this to look, and then not actually offering what they need.
Perfect. Makes sense. Uh, Next question for you. As an HR leader, how do you ensure that the onboarding process remains agile and adaptable to changing circumstances?
Yeah, I think for us, so much of that is the feedback. I know we've talked about this already a little bit, but
Yeah, yeah,
that feedback in terms of open communication with the new hires, with their managers, with teams. I always say, though, especially in smaller companies or startups, I think so much of what the HR team can do is offer structure to help enable instead of process and rigidity. So, although we do offer process, saying you must do it exactly in this way because this is how we've enabled you to do it and this is the only way you can do it is not really the best way to support onboarding, especially in a smaller organization. I think our role is to build the infrastructure, give the tools, and then work with the managers and the individuals to make that experience the best that it can be. And I think that's what keeps it more flexible and adaptable.
perfect. Thanks, Vanessa. Makes a lot of sense. Now let's segue into HR technology, right?
Sure.
And we would let's try and marry HR technology and employee onboarding. So my next question for you is, how can HR leaders utilize AI and automation to streamline the onboarding process and enhance efficiency?
Yeah, good question. I think there's a lot of conversation happening right now
Yeah,
in the realm of AI. What I always say is just think about again, what should be a human moment and what should be a technology enabled moment, right? So
yeah,
where do people really need that human touch to onboard well? Ways that we're doing it at Policy Me in terms of tech and AI enablement for our job descriptions. We use AI to help us supplement the writing component and getting first drafts together. And then we've created a repeatable tool with an organization called Kindo that enables you to build repeatable workflows. And we build our 30, 60, 90-day plans through that. Basically, how it works is we've trained the tool with our values, with how we like to do 30, 60, 90-day plans, and we give it a job description and it gives us a draft of the plan every time. So we send those to managers and then give managers a chance, of course, to then tweak them and make them better for the employee and make them essentially what they need them to be. But we really do find that AI is excellent at helping us put together first drafts, especially for written materials. But I do always say it's great to use technology, but it's super important to remember that, especially when people are joining a company, those human moments are really important.
so true. So true. Totally agree with you on that. My next question for you doesn't have to do with AI, right, for a change, but we're going to be talking about virtual reality or augmented reality. So, uh, in what ways do you see these emerging technologies transforming the future of employee onboarding?
I think that it's a great question. I would say that in my space, it isn't super applicable because we are a tech company. And even if we were onboarding in the office, we would be onboarding onto a desk job. So we work on our computers. Where I've heard about it working really well, and I've seen a few changes in how things are working, is more industries like aviation, where you can use virtual technologies and augmented reality to help people understand, how do you fly a plane, and helping create more of that onboarding and that learning from home that may not have been possible before. So I think there's a huge space for it, especially with things that, you need to learn about your surroundings, and perhaps sending someone VR goggles to their home, they're able to start that onboarding experience at a distance. And then by the time they come in, they're able to have a better understanding. So there's definitely, I think, lots of potential application. Just it's important again to figure out, does that make sense in your industry and organization?
Great. Thank you for sharing that perspective, Vanessa. Last question. Any piece of literature, book, documentary, movie, anything that comes to your mind that has really shaped your leadership journey and has impacted the kind of HR leader that you have evolved into?
Yeah, when you sent this question in advance, I was really thinking about it. I think there's so many different things that one could
Yeah.
share, but one book that I really really liked. A lot of people have read this one, but if you haven't, it's called Atomic Habits. And have you heard of it?
Yes, by James Clear.
Yeah. So
Wonderful
the
book.
the nice thing about the book is it talks about starting small to build habits, and how most things that we do really can be changed or improved, or new things that we want to start doing by just taking like that tiny little step consistently. And I think in roles like HR, where there's often so much to do, limited time, limited resources, thinking about how to start small with ourselves on any change we want to make or in our organizations and incrementally building on top of that with the small changes, it can have such a big impact. And I've found that, trying to do a monumental shift, especially say in like employee experience or how things are within an organization, is really, really hard because change management is difficult and people can only tolerate so much change at once, especially with everything else going on in their roles. So I think taking that step back and thinking about the small ways in which we can drive incremental change can be really, really impactful.
Great. I've read that book and it's an amazing read, Vanessa, I must admit. Thanks for sharing that with our audience. I think with that, we have come to the end of this awesome conversation. I wish we could have covered more topics, but maybe we can again have you on the CHRO Mindset podcast and cover other topics that might be of interest to you as well as to our audience. Thanks a lot for being there on today's episode of the CHRO Mindset. Your ideas were truly inspiring, and I must say that added a lot of value, at least to me as well, not just to our audience, because with each of these conversations that I have with the HR leaders like you, I consider this like a mini MBA for me when it comes to HR, right? So there's a lot of value in what you shared with us today. Thanks for sharing those insights, and we are grateful you took out the time to join us and share your insights.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Vanessa. To all our listeners, thank you for tuning into the CHRO Mindset podcast today. We trust you enjoyed this conversation with Vanessa Kotler. Your continuous support means the world to us. Stay engaged for more enriching conversations. We'd love to hear your feedback. Wherever you are listening to this podcast episode, please do leave us a review. We would greatly appreciate it.